Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Mary. Thank you so much for being here. I'm doing a very exciting video that I look forward to every year because I get a lot of book recommendations from videos like this, and that is my top 10 books that I read in 2025. So I'm going to share my 4 and 5 star books that I read this year. So for some context, if you're new here, I read mainly romance and contemporary fiction, but some of these books are historical fiction and fantasy. So while most of the books are romance, there are a few other genres as well. So I think I have a great compilation of different books to share. Hopefully you get some good recommendations from this video. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite book of the year was. Okay, so I'm going to start with the only book on my list that I don't have here in person, and that's because I lent it to my mom to read because I feel like we have similar book taste. She is not necessarily a romance reader, but some of the contemporary fiction books that I love, she also loves. And the first one is The Great Alone by Kristin Hannah. This is one that I cannot stop thinking about. I think about this book every week at least, and this was my first Kristin Hannah book. It started out with a bang. It was phenomenal. So I read this book in January, and it was the absolute perfect time to read it. It's set in Alaska, so this family of 3, the mom, dad, and 13-year-old girl, move from Seattle to Alaska. And the dad is a Vietnam War veteran, and he is definitely struggling internally. He definitely has a lot of trauma from being in the war, and when he comes home, he is basically just a different person. So we are following the 13-year-old girl Lenny and her family as they move from Seattle to Alaska. It is a struggle. So the beginning of the book follows the family preparing for their first winter in Alaska. There are some heavy themes in this book, so I would definitely look up some trigger warnings. There are themes of domestic violence, toxic relationships, and grief. So just putting that out there in case you are sensitive to those topics. But I loved this book so much. I loved following Lenny's journey and how strong a 13-year-old girl can be. It was so inspiring and it was so emotional, both sad and heartwarming at the same time. And I don't want to give too much away. This book was just incredible. I just want to read a note that I wrote down about this book. It says, there were so many quotes about feeling unsafe both in and out of the home as a woman that I think are incredibly relatable to many people who have either been in toxic relationships or just have felt unsafe as a woman in this world. If you're interested in getting into historical fiction, definitely check out Kristin Hannah. I'm not someone who was ever that interested in history. I was never good at history in school, and that kind of put me off to learning about historical events. She writes in a way that is so incredibly digestible and relatable, so you are like eager to find out about this time period. This was set in the 1970s, by the way. It was so interesting and you will definitely cry. The next book on my list is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is part of a trilogy. So this is the first book in the trilogy. There's also Reckless and Fearless. Fearless came out this year. And then there is a novella as well, which is also on my list. But that's kind of included in this one, so it's like a 2-for-1. This is a young adult romantasy. This is set in a world where there are elites and there are ordinaries. So elites have powers and ordinaries are just normal people who do not have powers, and this is following a girl who is born an ordinary but basically is trained her entire life to pretend like she's an elite. She pretends like she's a psychic, and her dad taught her to do that to blend in with the elites because they obviously are treated differently. It follows Peyton, who is the female main character, and Kai, who is the male main character in this book. Kai is a prince, so his dad is the king. This is basically about Paden and Kai, and they are thrown into what is called the Purging Trials. It's kind of similar to the trials in the Hunger Games. A lot of people compare the two. I don't think it's that similar where, like, if you've read the Hunger Games, you shouldn't read this. I think you will actually love this. If you've read the Hunger Games, this is so good, and the tension between Paden and Kai is unbeatable. It is so, so good. They kind of have a love-hate relationship, and I love it so much. I was not obsessed with the second book, and I've not read the third book yet because the second book kind of put me off, but I definitely recommend reading at least Powerless. And then this is the novella. It's called Powerful. It follows one of the side characters in Powerless, and she is Paden's best friend. Her name is Adina, and it follows her relationship with someone that she meets after Paden gets put into the trials. This was incredible. I read it in one sitting. Amazing. Cried. Loved it. Okay, the next book is my most recent read, and that is The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. This is one of those books where everyone is obsessed with it. Everyone raves about it. I know I'm going to love it, but I put off reading it because I have such high expectations for it. I don't know why I put it off and don't just pick it up and read it because I know I'm going to love it. This is a book that I borrowed from my mom. My mom loved it so much. My cousin read it, loved it so much. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for a long time. So I finally picked it up. I wanted to wait until I was emotionally ready to read this because I knew it was going to absolutely shatter my heart. And it did. It did. Every second that I read this, every page that I read it, my heart broke more and more. Don't let that scare you away because it was a phenomenal book. This is a book that is set during World War II, and it's set in France. Again, like obviously I have gotten education on World War II and what happened during World War II, but I did not know much about France during World War II. So this is about two sisters who are living in France. So something happened during their childhood and they were basically split up. So the older sister fell in love at a very young age. She started a family with her husband, and then the younger daughter basically was in and out of different schools. She is the more rebellious daughter, and they have a very complicated relationship with their father. So neither of them live with their parents. They never really grew up together. So this basically follows two different point of views, each daughter, and what they go through during the war. So a lot happens, a lot of horrible, horrible things happen, of course. This was insane. To think that this is actually based on true historical events. It's not a true story, but the author did get the privilege of meeting people who were survivors of World War II, and she kind of based the story off of the women who survived World War II, and that is because in a lot of history books and things that we all have learned, it comes from the mouths of men. So it's their experiences. We're focusing on the men who fought the war, and we don't hear a lot about the women and how they survived the war. Kristin Hannah writes books about incredibly strong women, and that is definitely the case in this book. My heart was actually breaking every time I read a new sentence, but the fact that they had the strength to live during this time is so, so crazy. This was an amazing book. It was so well written. Sometimes a book like this and a book this long can be intimidating. It was very easy to read and understand, and I could not recommend this enough. I recommend it to anyone. No matter what genre you usually read this book. Please. So the next book is part of a series, and it is called Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is my first Abby Jimenez book, and I fell in love with her writing. I don't think it was my favorite of the series. The third book is actually, I think, my favorite, but I loved this one as well. This is about Alexis, who is an ER doctor. She's a little bit older. She's in her 30s, and she's married to a surgeon, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. They have a complicated relationship. This is set in Minnesota, and she lives in the city, and she is, I think, traveling for some reason through this small town, and she meets the main male character, Daniel. He is a carpenter in this small town. She is this city girl. She has a family legacy. They are all ER doctors and surgeons. She's part of this really legendary family in the medical field, but she doesn't feel the way that they feel about medicine. She is fine with being an ER doctor, but she doesn't need to have the fame and glory like the rest of her family does. She meets this small town boy and sees where he lives and how different it is from the city, and she kind of has this internal struggle because her family is kind of pushing her in one direction, but she's kind of figuring out who she is and what really means the most to her. This was such a good story. It was very sweet, and the romance was amazing, but it also touched on deeper issues as well, which I think made it a very well-rounded romance novel. I loved this so much. And I'm going to actually talk about another book in this series. So this is an interconnected series. You don't necessarily have to read them in order, but I did. So the first one is Part of Your World, and then there's one in between these two called Yours Truly. I liked that one. I think I gave it 3 stars. I didn't like it as much as these two. So this one is called Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. You might have seen this or read it already because this is a really popular romance book. This was so good. It's also set in Minnesota, and since it's the 3rd book of the series, you get to see the other characters who were in the first 2 books, which I always love in an interconnected series, to see where they are today and like how they interact with the new characters. So this is about Emma. I believe she's a traveling nurse, and she has this curse where every guy she dates, they fall in love with the next person they meet. So it's never her. It's kind of like always a bridesmaid, never a bride type of thing. Like, she is what leads them to their forever partner. So she is a traveling nurse. She's never really stayed in one place for a long time, and she travels the country with her best friend. So they both pick like where they want to go next. They take turns. So the main character, Emma, has a very complicated and toxic relationship with her mother. So it is, again, a romance novel that touches on deeper topics. Emma, the main character, comes in contact with this man named Justin over the internet. And he is basically famous for being love's good luck charm. He has the same curse as Emma. So they are trying to connect so that they can each break each other's curse, and things happen along the way. This was a really good book. I definitely recommend reading it in the summertime. It's set like on a lake, and I think this was an incredible read. Okay, the next book is also part of an interconnected series, and that is Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the first series that I've read from Elsie Silver, and this is the 2nd book in the Rose Hill series. So the first one is Wild Love, this one is Wild Eyes, and then Wild Side, and I think Wild Card came out this year. I've not read that one yet, but I read the first 3. I loved this book so much. This had me giggling, it had me kicking my feet. It was so sweet, and I am obsessed with the single dad in this, West. He was iconic. I have to read this Goodreads review because I was laughing so hard. It says, Weston Belmont, sir, with a bunch of question marks, daddy, question marks, I'm so disgustingly feral. Yeah, that's how I felt about him too. He is everything. So this book is set in Canada. It's in rural Canada on the west coast. And this is a book about a single dad. He has 2 young kids, and he is a horse trainer. He meets this LA girl. She's a country music star, and she has a lot of bad press. She's gotten into a lot of trouble with the press. She kind of goes to Canada to escape her life, and she's having a lot of internal struggles. she meets West, and he is famously like a player, kind of. He's like a shameless flirt. He is this like masculine horse trainer guy. She sees him in a much different way than other people do, and the way that he acts around Skylar, the female main character, is so different than how he would normally act around a girl. He is so caring and like just wants to provide a safe, respectful place for her while she's going through a lot, and boy, was this a wild ride. It was so, so good. In the summertime, I love reading like a Western cowboy romance. I recommend reading the whole series, and I definitely want to read the other series. I think is it Chestnut Springs? The Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver I want to read next year. Okay, and the next one is also a Western cowboy romance and part of an interconnected series, and it is Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. So this is part of the Rebel Blue Ranch interconnected series by Lila Sage, and the first one is Done and Dusted. The second one is Swift and Saddled. This one is Lost and Lassoed, and then the fourth one is Wild and Wrangled. This is my favorite in the series. It kind of reminds me of Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. It's about a single dad, but he is grumpy. He is like kind of has a stick up his butt and like very serious about his work and kind of more of a serious person, but he has this soft spot for his daughter, of course. He loves his daughter so much. He loves his family. He's part of a very tight-knit family, and he runs the Rebel Blue Ranch, so he's like the one in charge under his dad. So he takes that very seriously. So Gus is the main male character. Teddy is Gus's sister's best friend, and she is this rebellious, artistic girl that loves fashion. She just is her own person, and I love that so much about her. She is unapologetically herself, and she will not change who she is for anybody, even a grumpy man like Gus. So they've grown up together because Teddy and his sister are best friends, and they've kind of always had this like feud. They don't get along, they bicker and fight all the time until they start seeing each other in a different light. And the tension, the chemistry, the fact that they go from like enemies to lovers is so good. I loved this. Also, something about this book that I loved is the relationship of Teddy and Gus's daughter Riley. Gus's daughter Riley is the sweetest little girl. Everyone's obsessed with her. Like, she has this big family that spoils her, but she's so sweet. Riley definitely brings out a different side of Teddy. Teddy's usually this like feisty girl, but she kind of has like a soft spot for Riley, and this was so good. I loved it. Okay, the next book is a summer read, and it is This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. The setting of this book is everything. It's set on Prince Edward Island, and it is so dreamy. It's like on this cliffside. It's like a cozy beach town, which is my ideal beach town. The setting of Carly Fortune's books are always insane, like so gorgeous, so dreamy, and she just writes about that really well while also writing about romance, and it's just the best of both worlds for me. This is about our main character, Lucy. So her best friend Bridget and Lucy go to Prince Edward Island every year and vacation at this family home. So one year Lucy gets to the island before Bridget, and she meets this man, and he's a local. He works at a local restaurant, and he's like a professional oyster shucker, I think. Did I make that up? That would be insane if I made that up. And they have this insane chemistry. They have this fling, and then she never hears from Felix again. Then she finds out that Felix is closer to someone in her life than she would have liked. It says, Lucy and Felix's chemistry is unreal, but the list of reasons why they need to stay away from each other is long, and they vow to never repeat that electric night. This was amazing. The setting, the romance, the chemistry, loved it. Okay, the next book is actually also by Carly Fortune, and that is One Golden Summer. So this is kind of an interconnected book with Every Summer After. I reread Every Summer After before I read this book because a lot of people were saying you kind of want the background on the main male character of One Golden Summer before you read it to kind of get like his whole story. So that's what I did, and I'm glad I did that. So this is about a girl, Alice, who has a very good relationship with her grandmother, and her grandmother is struggling. She's kind of declining in her health. She needs a pick-me-up, and they decide to go to this lake house that they spent one summer together at, and it's called Barry's Bay. So Alice and her grandma decide to go there for a summer to kind of relive those memories that they had when Alice was 17. When she was 17, she took this picture of a yellow boat with 3 teenagers in it, and she kind of watched these teenagers that summer and was jealous of like the fun that they were having. She kind of felt lonely as a teen, and all she had was her camera. So then when she goes back later in her life, I think she's in her 20s or maybe 30. So she goes back with her grandma and she runs into Charlie Florrick, and they live across the lake from each other. Charlie Florrick is this shameless flirt. He always has been, always will be. He is kind of like the boy next door, bad boy vibe. And he has a younger brother, Sam, who Every Summer After was following Sam and Percy, and their relationship, but this one is mainly about Charlie. And Charlie is everything and more. Charlie is so dreamy. So this kind of follows Charlie and Alice's encounters. Charlie comes over and like helps out. He has a relationship with her grandma that is so sweet. Like, he is so caring, wants to make her feel better, wants to make her laugh. Alice doesn't trust him. She's kind of more reserved, kind of like is protecting her own heart. Then they sort of start to become friends. Charlie wants to bring like the fun back into Alice's life, and this was such a sweet story. I loved this so much. It was a perfect summer read. Okay, and the last book on my list is this one. This is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but this book really, really surprised me. I was probably most surprised by this book because I went into it thinking it was just like a cute fall spooky romance. This was a lot deeper than I thought. Maybe it was just like I was in a very introspective mood when I was reading this. This is set in England, and it's about Mika Moon, who is a witch. And witches are not supposed to be out in the community. They're not supposed to talk about being witches. So every once in a while they have these meetings, and about 20 witches get together and basically talk about their experiences, what they're going through, and that is the one time where they can actually talk about being a witch. So Mika lost her parents at a young age, as most witches do. Ever since she was little, she had this kind of older woman in her life who is also a witch, who was basically telling her it's unsafe to be around other witches. When the powers collide, it gets bad. So she basically had that in her mind growing up, that she had to be isolated from people like her. She decides to start this social media page where she pretends to be a witch. She makes these potions, she has this like witchy aesthetic, but obviously people don't believe her that she's a real witch. Then she gets contacted by this man, and he basically knows that she is a witch somehow, and that is because he is also surrounded by witches. He lives in this isolated house with a bunch of people, including 3 young children who are witches. So the 3 girls who are witches need kind of like an older witch to help them control their powers, and that's why they reached out to Mika. She goes to this place called the Nowhere House. It's run by this older man, his husband, another woman who takes care of the house, and then a librarian who is a younger man in his 30s, I believe. And the younger man, Jamie, who is the librarian, he does not want to expose the girls to someone else that he doesn't trust, and there are a lot of secrets that are not being told to Mika. Yeah, it basically follows her journey, like getting to know these young witches and the trials and tribulations of being together as witches and not being isolated. This has a lot of themes of like intersectionality, being someone different in society, being someone who is not accepted in society, and I think it was a really good read. It was such a cute, cozy read, but with these deeper themes, and I think it was so relatable. Like I said, I thought this was just going to be like a cozy, lighthearted read, but it was so much more, and I loved this. So that was my top 10 books of 2025. I feel like I had a really good reading year. I read more books than I ever had in a year. I found some books that have introduced me to other genres other than romance, and I'm very excited about that. I have high hopes for next year, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know again what your favorite book of 2025 was down below in the comments. If you like videos like this, book recommendations, cozy content, and vlogs, make sure that you like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.